It's good to be back in the pulpit. It's good to share this morning with you. For me, it's a special morning, my first Sunday back after a 3-month sabbatical. And actually my first time preaching in 3 months since we had our flower communion back in June. And I'm glad to be with you, to see longtime members and to meet new people. I understand we've had quite a few visitors over the summer. And so if you're visiting today and we've never talked before, please come up and say hello after the service. I'd love to get a chance to know you a little bit. Congregational life, if it is anything, is a conversation. Ralph Waldo Emerson described good preaching as life passed through the fire of thought. Life passed through the fire of thought is an apt description of our collective purpose. We come together to share our lives and collectively reflect upon what is most important to us. I share my word with you. You share your word with me. Together, living, reasoning, and loving the world, we offer each other a little bit of what we've found out about what it means to be human. We honor the stories of those who have gone before us, and we try our best to pass on our own stories to the coming generations. These last months, I've of course been absent from our discourse, and I'm eager to resume my place and learn what's been happening with you. How has it been with your hearts? I've visited several of you this week. Reverend Scott thoughtfully left me with a rather long list of pastoral calls to make as soon as I got back. I'm slightly ashamed to say I haven't made it entirely the way through the list this last week, but I'm going to get all the way through next week. And I know that at a time like this, like most times I suppose, people are filled with a mixture of hope and anxiety, fear and joy, anticipation and dread, conflict and calm. It's also a time for gratitude. We're here on this day. There is beautiful music. The sun is shining. The live oaks along Southmore offer their evergreen shade and bless us with their steady company. A certain loveliness pervades the courtyard. In this sanctuary, there's company and fellowship and friendship to be found. We've gathered to celebrate the life we share, the warmth of our community, and the fire of commitment. Here there is company for the lonely and an opportunity to seek truth and make beauty together. The Christian theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer wrote, "In ordinary life, we hardly realize that we receive a great deal more than we give, and that it is only with gratitude that life becomes rich." And so I want to offer you a little of my gratitude this morning. I'm very appreciative of the congregation for having provided me the opportunity to have a sabbatical. Now, I know that offering them to ministers is standard practice in Unitarian Universalist congregations, but that doesn't make me less grateful for having had the chance to get away, gain some perspective and respite, and engage deeply with research and writing. These past couple of years have been times of record burnout for clergy across all traditions. The stress of COVID has meant that Unitarian Universalist ministers have been retiring or leaving the parish ministry in record numbers, at any point higher in the last 2 years and at any point higher in the last several decades. And I want to share that despite the difficulties of these times, I've never thought of doing so, and you're the main reason why I've not thought that. I think that we have good work to do together. I think that we make good conversation partners, and I'm grateful for you for that and feel supported from you in doing my part of it. Not just supported in having a sabbatical, but supported in the encouragement that you've given me throughout my time here, particularly in maintaining this free pulpit. A free pulpit at this time in this country's history and in this state feels like something that is very precious to come back to. Pulpit from which we can offer our tradition's message of hope and love, a free pulpit from which we can proclaim truth as best we can in a world increasingly haunted by untruths, a free pulpit where I can share my part of our ongoing dialogue about what it means to be human, to live and to die, and to struggle so that there might be a little bit more goodness in the world. Gratitude. I'm thankful to the staff and the board for all that was done in my absence. I'm especially thankful for the Sunday morning worship leaders and the way that they collectively continued our conversation. I understand that the services went very well in my absence and that you had the opportunity to gain something from the word and spiritual gifts from such great preachers as Bishop Carlton Pearson, Jason Obi, Stephen J. Ray, Claudia Jimenez, and Aaron Walter. And that when you were not being blessed by them, Carol Burris, D. Scott Cooper, and Dr. Jolie Rock all offered you sustenance for the soul. I certainly found some sustenance for my soul while I was gone. My time was spent working on a book on contemporary Unitarian Universalist theology, a project I'll be sharing with you in the coming months. I'm preparing for our upcoming PhotoFest exhibition. I had the opportunity to visit the artist Lubusze Yarczykowiczka in her studio in Prague and work with her in selecting images for the show. We'll be presenting her photographs of the Tea Club, one of Prague's 2 LGBTQ+ clubs in the 1980s. It was a time when Czechoslovakia was ruled by the Communist Party, and under that regime, free speech, free expression, and free thought were all criminalized. It was technically legal to be gay. The communists legalized consensual acts between people of the same gender in 1962. Some 40 years, I must add, before the Supreme Court struck down sodomy laws here in Texas. However, living an openly LGBTQ lifestyle marked someone as socially undesirable and led to a life of being constantly monitored by the secret police. It was common for police to charge LGBTQ people that they did not like with gross indecency or simply blackmail them. Lubusze documented the celebration of life that took place in the underground club she frequented in the midst of an oppressive society. There is joy, vibrancy, and love in her pictures. And I think it's important for us to share them here on our sanctuary now, at this time when free expression is under threat in the United States and in Texas. At the time when the state of Florida has passed a Don't Say Gay law, and the state of Texas has targeted parents of transgender children and banned the teaching of critical race theory. I think it's an act of religious dissent to use our sanctuary to show pictures of the LGBTQ community. In addition to my visit with Lubusze, I spent several weeks deeply immersed in fine libraries in Oxford, Manchester, and London, reading and writing and thinking about the origins and contours of our movement. And so I bring you greetings from the several member congregations of the British General Assembly of Unitarian and Free Christian Churches that I visited while I was in the United Kingdom. The Cross Street Chapel of Manchester and the Roslyn Hill Unitarian Chapel in Hampstead Heath, both founded in 1692, the Newington Green Church dating to 1708, and the Oxford Unitarians, who since 1893 have been gathering for worship at Harris Manchester College, the former Unitarian college that is now part of the University of Oxford. Now, as I said at the outset, congregational life can be thought of as a conversation. And a religious tradition might be thought of as a conversation between congregations. Communities that form a tradition together agree upon what they're going to talk about. This set of scriptures, that set of concerns, this variety of rituals, that assemblage of divinities. And they agree upon how the conversation will proceed. Indeed, the great inflection points at Unitarian history often have occurred around the question of which congregations will take part in. In New England, in the early 19th century, Unitarianism began life as a separate denomination when conservative Congregationalists decided they did not want liberal, non-Trinitarian ministers to be part of their discourse. In Massachusetts, the institution of the pulpit exchange goes way back to the earliest days of the colony. And it was common amongst the first of our congregations for ministers to swap pulpits on a regular basis. Minister might preach 3 Sundays in his own congregation, and then on the 4th go trade with a colleague and preach at theirs. At the start of the 19th century, preachers like William Ellery Channing began to offer sermons that rejected the idea that human beings were innately depraved or that Jesus was a blood sacrifice by God to God. Instead, they told their congregants that the aim of religion was to help grow into the likeness of God. The conservatives were not amused. They literally decided to stop talking to Channing and his ilk. The early Unitarians were disinvited from the regular conversations of the ministers' meetings, and people who did not like their theology refused to exchange pulpits with them. They were told, in essence, that they were no longer sharing a conversation with their former co-religionists because they did not share the same doctrinal beliefs. Have you ever had an experience like that, where you thought you were part of an ongoing conversation, a community, and then found yourself that you were no longer welcome to it? If you have, then you might know that the experience can be painful. The early Unitarians in New England certainly found it to be painful. So much so that as they consolidated our tradition into a distinctive movement, they decided to organize their communities around the basis of covenant rather than creed. Creeds are statements of beliefs that set the boundaries of a congregation's conversation. Covenants are promises we make to each other about how we will treat each other and act in the world as we proceed with our conversation. I've been talking with you about the nature of our shared conversation because in our remaining time together, I want to offer you a bit of framing about what we'll be discussing in this congregation between now and June. As you might remember, Scott and I take a thematic approach to our sermons. With input from the staff and with dialogue with many of you, we select a theme for worship for the year and then sub-themes for each month. We do this because it helps to organize our thoughts and to make our conversations a bit more structured. Now, our Christian and Jewish friends have liturgical calendars that they follow that are closely tied to their sacred scriptures. In both cases, their preaching schedules are dictated by a desire to read together as a congregation all of a given set of texts over a particular period of time. And when they've completed that task, they start back at the beginning of the text. Unitarian Universalism has no such prescribed structure. Instead of taking the Hebrew Bible or the Christian New Testament as the starting point of our faith, we root ourselves in direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder. Then we try to figure out what our experiences mean. Do you know what I'm talking about? Our approach to theology works a bit like this. Something happens to you, or better, you do something, or even better, there's a moment that feels substantive to you. It might be anything. A momentous incident, the birth of a child, the death of a friend, a grand journey to another country, a great adventure, or something ordinary. The way milk swirls when it is poured into black tea, followed by the glory of the sweet first sip. The bark of a tree, which in William Haskell Simpson's words offers us something you say to me that is under the earth, something you say to me that is over the earth. Whatever the case, the operative word is feel. Mystery and wonder are not concepts that tie closely to rationality. They're related instead to that which is beyond words. They're connected to the famous interpretation by Coleman Barks of the Sufi poet Rumi. Beyond our ideas of right doing and wrongdoing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in the grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make sense anymore. When we pick a theme for our program year, we try to somehow consider the impossible to consider experiences that are going on in the world. And we also think carefully about what is happening here in First Houston. We try as best we can to get some sense of what you've been experiencing and what you might experience, and how our words in collective worship may help you make some sense of it all. In the case of our congregation, this means being very cognizant of the reality that we're now entering the third year of my 5-year developmental ministry with you. You might remember that after the departure of your previous senior minister, you decided, in conversation with the staff of the Unitarian Universalist Association, that you were not ready to call another settled minister. There was some work you wanted to do and some things you felt you needed to figure out, to talk about before you elected another minister. So you asked me to be in dialogue with you around a group of questions about the nature of congregational life. All of these questions have, in some sense, to do with a larger question: what kind of congregation is First Houston? This program year is going to be key for answering or trying to answer that question. The Mission, Vision, and Covenant Committee is going to lead you in a series of conversations around developing a new vision, mission, and covenant. Today, they're holding the first of their series of focus groups after the service, and I urge you to attend one. And if you cannot make it today, there will be other opportunities between now and the middle of November. I hope that you will attend, because in January, the congregation will be voting to adopt a new mission, vision, and covenant at a specially called congregational meeting. After that, the Transformation Committee will begin a conversation about adopting the proposed 8th principle. It reads, "We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promise, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions." There will be discussion about incorporating this text into the association's principles at General Assembly next spring. And we will be voting on whether or not to affirm it at a special congregational meeting in May. And that's not all. This year, we're also talking about a much-needed capital campaign to handle deferred maintenance and possibly modify our campus. These are big conversations in the life of a congregation. They'll shape what it means to be part of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston for a generation or more to come. And so the theme that we selected to try to knit these conversations together is roots and branches. Trees have long been an important religious metaphor. Various traditions speak of the tree of life. The Buddha found enlightenment sitting under the Bodhi tree. Some Christians liken the cross to a tree. Often trees are taken to represent the totality of the world, or of humanity, or of religious knowledge. We picked this theme this year because we'll be carefully exploring together the totality of our religious community. Where have we come from? Where do we hope to go? The roots that ground us, the things that bind us together, the branches we aspire to extend. Trees, we hope, will provide some useful metaphors in this conversational effort. There are many similarities, after all, between congregations and trees. Both are entities that grow across many human generations. Both form complicated ecosystems. The live oaks outside my office window are homes to mosses, air plants, squirrels. So much life. The congregation hosts a couple of dozen communities within it. It is truly a community of communities. The women's group, the Justice Coordinating Council, the Religious Education Program, the choir, so much vibrancy. Both succeed best when they are part of a network. We gain much by being part of the conversation that is the Unitarian Universalist Association and participating in the larger dialogue of the global Unitarian Universalist movement. Trees, as Robin Wall Kimmerer eloquently reminds us, are able to speak to one another. A forest, as it turns out, is a network of entwined organisms communicating, learning, sharing counsels together. And so too it is with congregations. And that is, in the end, what I hope we will be doing together this year, talking about the nature of our community, the deep concerns of each of us, and what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist congregation. Congregational life is a conversation. I'm grateful to be part of it and to be back to resume my portion of our collective discourse. I'm eager to hear what you have to say about the nature of our communion and how it is in your hearts. What does it mean to be part of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston? What makes you proud of our community? What dreams do you have for our future? Congregational life is a conversation. And this year we'll be exploring the roots and branches as we consider a new mission, vision, and covenant. This year we'll be discussing whether or not we're going to make an explicit commitment to dismantling white supremacy and other forms of oppression. Whether this is your first time here or your 1,000th, your words and wisdom are welcome as together we share something about what it means to be human, pursue beauty, and offer each other companionship as we seek to bring more justice into the world. That it might be so, I invite the congregation to say, Amen.